Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the mini game podcast for Monday, October 6, 2025. We're here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is doing a crossover apparently with eFootball, which seems to be a very weird crossover collab to have happen. I just can't imagine that there is that significant amount of people who are into eFootball and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. It probably speaks to the stagnation that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, in that it's fine if you just want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! But it really dropped the ball on being an amazing app that would have brought people back to playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or made it easy for new players to join Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, I heavily would suspect that there's very, very few kids of modern generations that would want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel versus maybe playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush versus more than likely just playing Pokemon TCG. And yeah, same is probably true with Magic the Gathering, even worse. I doubt there's too many new generations playing Magic the Gathering. We'll scroll down the SteamDB 24-hour peak concurrent chart to see what people are playing, and in that we will also be doing about an hour. We'll do about an hour of warm-up and then we'll jump into the video game news. Actually, I suspect it won't be that much. We can see Digimon Story Time Stranger is huge. You can see this is in the family library, so that's a new label for my account. Inherently, I gave a kid a game to. I gave a Steam Deck to a kid, who's obviously in my Steam family, and his parent got a Steam card. And because they had the Steam gift cards, they put the credits into their own account, and then they just bought the Digimon Story Time Stranger in the parents' account and then shared it with the kids. Now, that is for the most part the way you would want it, but it does create this odd separation now in the labels here. I could still play this game, certainly, as it's family shareable, but it does label things differently. The main factor, though, is you want games to be in some adult account and not in the kids account, because I don't believe kids accounts can share games with other kids. So there are 5 slots in Steam Family. There's a decent chance that you're going to have at least 2 of those be kid accounts. As such, you wouldn't want to purchase a game directly for a kid's account. If you, the other reason for that obviously is the kid's account may also at some point get banned or something, because let's face it, kids are going to be the ones that are most likely to do something shady, although it's pretty hard to get banned on Steam as an account goes. Of course, that also highlights a permanency of what a Steam family setup is going to be, is that it is just going to be for life, if not multiple lifetimes, that people are going to be in the same account. So while you could jump from one Steam account to another, it's not likely that it's going to happen. Although I could see you being a parent, you having 5 kids, which would be a lot. Well, let's go with the more average: 3 kids, a mother and father, all in one Steam family. The kids grow up, they want to make their own accounts for their own kids, assuming Steam Family still works that way. Then I could see at that point a separation happening. but I doubt it really would go down that way. I imagine you just use the same accounts over and over again. Somebody would die and then somebody else would take over the account as the right move. Below Digimon Storytime Stranger is Skate. I saw some talk about this early access release. Apparently it needs a lot of work from EA, which is not super surprising. I should probably say, over the weekend, I don't even know what I was doing. Let me just get to the main part. On Sunday, I woke up at one point shivering with chills and fever, and I'm still recovering from that. So I don't know what happened there. The only thing I could think is that it was maybe food poisoning or just a random cold or flu, which is crazy that I would be able to pick up random cold and flus. Might also have been a blood sugar drop because right before it happened I had been putting off eating way too long, and I was working on a little project to take the logs from Adguard Home, which I have running on my Asus Merlin modded router. And so I'd already made a project that would let the setup to email myself from the router send other kinds of emails. And with that script, I used it to make a new example script to take the logs from Adguard Home. So long story short, I spent several hours just inspired making a thing that would scan the Adguard Home logs to see if any websites had been blocked by the parental setups. So if a kid IP address if a kid's device that has the parental setup goes to a like Pornhub or something, some inappropriate thing, they should be blocked immediately, but it will also be logged. So I made this email to, at the end of the day, scan the log for that day. And I probably didn't scan the logs particularly efficiently. And if it finds any matching things that were blocked, it will email me, which is a cool little experimental concept that for myself personally doesn't really matter too much. And frankly, I wouldn't even really have the kids blocking enabled other than for an experimental reason. There is an argument, though, to be made that the prevalence of porn on the internet, while I think it's pretty natural for teenagers, young teens, preteens, to want to look at porn on the internet, I feel like it's probably not very helpful in developing social skills. That being said, before there was really any porn at all, there was also a lot of, for lack of a better term, date rapes and sexual assaults, and men usually forcing themselves on women. So social skills didn't really exist too often anyways. But speaking in modern times, I would much prefer kids in general, teenagers, to just stay away from porn and focus more on dating and getting along with actual significant others of their own age. Because, not that I think there's anything super wrong with porn, it's just frankly too easy. It's the difference between fast food and learning to cook. That is probably a great example, yeah. with the prevalence of McDonald's and fast food, there obviously has been a significant drop in people's ability to cook for themselves. Dating, romance is the same in that case. Yeah. And I'll leave it at that. So yeah, anyways, I was working on that project, finished that project. Maybe that burnt too many calories because my brain was working too hard. I don't know how legitimate a claim like that really can be, but I just started shivering and having a fever, and so I felt really bad, and I've slept since then, so I feel a little bit better, but I still feel a little weak. My legs feel weak, my muscles feel like they're about to cramp up on me. So yeah, there's a danger certainly today that I will just immediately have some instantaneous turn in which I start feeling very weak, and I may have to end the stream otherwise. Before getting sick and also getting distracted, something weird happened to my Wi-Fi router in that channel 1 no longer works, and it may be because I updated the firmware, but the Wi-Fi channels 1 through technically 13 but really 11 is the max channel. If I set it to channel 1, or if I let it be on auto and it selects channel 1, devices just can't connect to it. And yeah, I don't know if channel 1 on the circuitry just burnt out, which would be kind of crazy, or if it was because I updated the firmware. It's probably because I updated the firmware. I probably should report that to them, come to think of it, but it created a weird situation where all of my smart devices were down and not working, and so I spent most of the weekend on Saturday, most of Sunday being sick, and most of Saturday working on my Wi-Fi, which means I didn't accomplish too much, but I did accomplish a few things as far as recording P-Cross Touch and making more episodes of that. I probably have about 10 hours more. Sorry, now I have the hiccups. Of P-Cross Touch. And did a little bit of cleaning and decluttering. I'm making tiny small amounts of progress there. A lot of it also is just like on the weekends. It's usually time to do some laundry, do some dishes. And those are also tiny things for most people, but exhausting things for me. So, yeah. Yeah, I really probably accomplish less than a third of what a normal person accomplishes in a day. It's not good. So by being sick on Sunday, I almost went all the way through the Steam Autumn sale without buying anything, but I still ended up managing to have enough time. And then the Prime Day sale is just around the corner, and there's already a Woot sale that I jumped on for a motion activated sink faucet. Yeah, I guess that's what that is. Yeah. The general idea, and this may be another thing where I'll have to have a handyman slash plumber install that for me. More than likely that'll be the case, just because it's so much, it's so difficult to reach around and reach under a sink to install it. But yeah, the general idea is that I'm trying to take my smart house to, as far as possible, being a place that is very much handicap friendly and germaphobe friendly. And yeah, I already have some faucets for my bathrooms that are motion sensor, and that'll also save on water, one would hope, too. But yeah, the wheelchair friendly in particular can very much be a case of, does someone have to reach all the way back to a sink to turn it on or not? And that's where motion sensors can also be helpful in that case too. There's a certain, only so far I can go with it, and frankly, people always will tell you the bones of your house are good, and that almost always is just to be a statement that means nothing, because frankly, unless you've stripped out the walls and the sheetrock and you're looking at the actual framing of the lumber, nobody knows what the actual bones of a house are, or the foundation of your house are, as far as the state of them. So a lot of the things I'm doing now are things that very possibly should be stripped out and put into a new house. But I also personally just also enjoy the germaphobe friendly element of that too, where you're not touching a faucet, you're not getting fingerprints on it, you're not getting it wet. Thus, maybe it will last a little bit longer. But yeah, usually the faucet ones with motion sensors in them are $150, $200, $250, $300. They've always been really, really expensive, and so a woot for $100 is still a lot, but it's not that much. Yeah, I'm very much afraid that the Prime Day sale is gonna get me buying a bunch of stuff that I really maybe don't need at the exact moment. There is a sale right now, even before the Prime Day sale, of a 30-gallon deck box, like a package box, piece of plastic box, but it's like $20 if you get the brown one, $26 if you get the black one, 30 gallons, and at $20 for a 30-gallon container that has handles and has a lock and has a lid, and it is a cube for the most part, it's a square, so it's stackable. You're actually getting a pretty good deal there, because it's usually $26 at minimum to get a plastic Tupperware that has a lid and is stackable. And so if you're looking for storage, having these boxes, which may be a little bit more rigid and will look a bit nicer over Tupperware storage, might work a lot better. But I don't know, there might be some aspect there about a storage bin being a single piece of plastic and not something that can assemble, disassemble, and possibly break, or its shape being designed in such a way that it is more stackable than these boxes would be. So I imagine I'll get a couple of those. I also want to find, as we look at the mobile revenue data, a couple of drawers to put on the bottom of my bookshelves. I have 4 bookshelves to the left of me where I'm sitting right now, and frankly I'm too tall to do anything with the bottom shelves at all. So I would like to put some kind of, even if it's a fabric drawer, or I would prefer it to be a wood drawer with a drawer pull out and push in, or it could even be just like a door, but I would prefer a drawer. I like there to be a way to put some drawers in there. But the bookshelves are bookshelf sized, and drawers tend not to be bookshelf size, in the sense that it's roughly 30 inches, I believe, across, and that's a pretty wide drawer, but only, I would say, 11 inches, maybe 14 inches deep, which is not very deep, because yes, books and drawers are different shapes. Plus, while my bookshelves are adjustable in their height, I don't know how adjustable they really would be to accommodate the height of a drawer, which is going to be several inches, 3 or 4 inches shorter than the size that I have my bookshelves separated out at. So I would effectively need somebody to make custom bookshelves. Is what I'm thinking would have to happen there. There probably is just a more logical move as far as sorting bins. And this is a taller person's problem, certainly, in that these bookshelves really aren't tall enough for me. They easily could go up 2 more heights, or at least 1 more height, and take up a full 10-foot high ceiling space, instead of being, I think, probably 6 feet at the moment, maybe 7. And so I also have a thought of trying to find some smaller bookshelves that I could stick on top of them that would match and look like it was all one unit. And yeah, maybe I couldn't reach without a stepladder the very top shelf, but I could definitely reach the second highest shelf without having to stand on anything. So probably is an argument for custom shelves too. Inherently, I'm still hoping to win the Publishers Clearinghouse, and thus have enough, get $1.5 million to build a new house, and in that I would just build custom shelves. In fact, in my dream house design, I have 2 hallways that are designed to literally just have shelves all the way through the hallway. So super wide hallways that lose some space by having custom built shelves on each end of them. Yeah. So yeah, as we were scrolling down here on the gacha games, I am still playing Memento Mori. They're still doing their popularity poll contest at the moment. Still playing not Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, Pokemon TCG, which they have a new solo event going on right now, and I am just continuously making more and more progress to having all of the cards in that game. And I have hit a point where I have a lot of tickets that I can't really do anything with at the moment, which is a shame because there is something I would like to get, but you can only get it with paying actual money. They have a really nice collection of playmats and backgrounds and card back art for this girl that I don't recognize, but she is a decent looking anime girl character. More interesting to look at than your average playmat in Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is usually boring and just shows a Pokeball. Yeah, I'm still playing Magic Emotica a little bit, not a ton. Picross Touch, we're at 216 hours apparently on that. And yeah, the autumn sale with 20% off the Steam Deck LCD, still a thing. In the end, I ended up buying just about $24 worth of stuff, with $10 of that being the Master Chief Collection during this sale. This is not one of the bigger sales anyways, so even that much is perhaps way too much to buy, particularly since I am not really getting that much extra time to play games. I was listening to another YouTuber and they mentioned how they had started 38 games this year in 2025 and only beaten 8 of them. I'm like, yeah, that seems to be about right. So here we can see Digimon's story Time Stranger is rated very positively, but weirdly it is going to be something that forever is going to be labeled as something that I already own. So yeah, if we open it up here in a second, we'll look at it. Suppose I could ignore it. That'd be about the only other thing. Just to remember, my concern is that years down the line I'm gonna for some reason want to buy it and forget that I already own it. But I do think also the game is Steam is probably going to make that very difficult. We didn't even look at the upcoming games, did we? Yeah. The last stream I streamed seemed to get a decent amount of views and a decent amount of watch time, so I'm happy with that. So yeah, it is gonna have this logo here, so I'll go ahead and take that off the fall list, and we'll see it's rated very positively. We still don't have any refurbs. I'm not really surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some refurbs show up during the fall sale. But yeah, I'm actually surprised to see that there's this much enthusiasm around Digimon, but whatever. I am also happily surprised that it is being received well, because some of the previous Digimon games have not been received particularly well. There was another game called, I think, Nexo World. It is a Pokemon-like game that's on sale for 99 cents. I grabbed that. Inherently, these are games for the kid I gave a Steam Deck to, who is all into role-playing games and Pokemon type games. Okay, well, that's going to bring us to Video Games Chronicle articles, but I'm noticing that I only have one Video Games Chronicle article open, and it's only 30 minutes, and I should just rush, so this was not an hour warm-up, this was a 30-minute warm-up. If I could consistently always make it a 30-minute warm-up, that'd be great. But yeah, all they have here is the first play of Lost Rift, which you can see is mixed reviewed here. So I'm gonna come over to this point and see what happened. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, all of those articles were missed. Or if they weren't missed, they were open somewhere else. I did notice that my macros today were running into some struggles. Let's see. So here's the other articles. As Xbox has raised its game prices, the former FTC chair says it warned Activision deal would harm gamers. I agree that Xbox's prices being raised harms gamers. I'm not sure this isn't a case of finding a connection where there is very little of a connection, because inherently the assumption you would have to make here is that because Microsoft was emboldened by being allowed to do this acquisition and gain Activision, they felt like they could raise prices without causing too big of a stink. The problem there is that they have raised too big of a stink, and we've seen significant pushback. Now, that's not to say for a second that I believe Activision Blizzard should have been allowed to be acquired by Microsoft. I agree that it definitely should have been stopped. But I don't know if it was really that was the reason that the prices got raised. The reason the prices got raised is because Microsoft realized they don't care about Xbox enough to not raise the prices, and because there is literally just a saturation in the number of gamers out there. You can't create any more gamers at this point. There just aren't any more people out there. If you are going to create more gamers, you would have to do it by making gaming more accessible to poorer nations, and that would mean lowering the prices, not increasing the prices. Oh, I just remembered, I did watch a movie over the weekend called Tank Girl. It's an old movie based off of a comic called Tank Girl. Just awful movie. I feel like what it was trying to do is tell the entirety of the story of Tank Girl, or at least an entire arc of Tank Girl, in a 2-hour movie, while also mostly ignoring the art and the attitude, or missing the mark on the art and the attitude of what the Tank Girl comics are, although I haven't actually read them. But yeah, there is it very much feels like an 80s comic to movie transition, which in weird parts actually does jump to actual comics, I wouldn't be surprised if the comic creator had too much influence. And for as much as we complain about people having licenses and doing something completely different with them and just having the name, I would much prefer that than to see a comic try to literally be translated to a movie. But yeah, I really cannot recommend anybody waste our time watching Tank Grow. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm probably losing some steam here. Developers had to rush to update games after a serious Unity vulnerability was discovered. The Memento Mori game had to be updated because of that too. I'm not sure if the other mobile games I played updated because of that too, and I just didn't recognize it. But yeah, several games came out with a vulnerability release. Marvel Snap Among Us issued patches. Obsidian pulled games from the stores immediately. I didn't hear anybody talk about what the specific vulnerability was, though. But that is another bad headline, certainly for Unity, who can't really afford to have that many more bad headlines. But now, by the time a couple days have passed, more than likely you would have updated your software, your games, unless you installed games that weren't on anything that auto-updated. So if you were installing a Unity-based game through an individual installer instead of through Steam or the App Store, the Apple App Store, or the Google Play Store, then you wouldn't have automatic updates in that case, but that would be kind of rare as far as games are today. Let's see. Next, Nintendo has issued a surprise denial to Japanese politicians' AI claim. The Nintendo Switch maker denies it's been lobbying against the use of generative AI. Why would Nintendo be lobbying against the use of generative AI? I would think Nintendo would totally want to use generative AI. That sounds exactly in line with what they would love to do, is to have a AI version of Miyamoto making video games that they wouldn't have to pay and wouldn't have to give any credits to. Which, yeah, Nintendo loves to not give credit to people and probably loves to not pay people. Let's see. So Japanese politicians can often be kind of crazy and wild, and this might very well be a low-level politician of no real popularity. Satoshi Asano posted on social media that Nintendo was avoiding using generative AI to protect its IP, and also engaging in lobbying activities with the government. Which, yeah. Maybe they're lobbying against something else, but I doubt that's the case. If anything, it feels like Satoshi Asano is pushing the idea in general that generative AI use is good. I bet Nintendo probably isn't doing too much with generative AI, just because I don't think Nintendo is that proactive in new technology when you look at their hardware and the level of software development. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have no AI projects going on. So Nintendo says, contrary to recent discussions on the internet, Nintendo has not had any contact with the Japanese government about generative AI. Whether generative AI is involved or not, we will continue to take necessary actions against infringement of our intellectual property rights. Asayano later retracted his claim and published an apology. I deeply regret my own failure to verify the facts adequately. Yeah. Doug Bowser, who just retired, had some thoughts on generative AI, but his thoughts don't really matter to Nintendo of Japan, who are going to really make all the decisions. Yeah. I think it would be a real long time before you saw Nintendo using generative AI. There's just not really a good enough reason for it, particularly to call it generative AI. Like there's been too many controversies, too much pushback. I could see maybe the Pokemon company, a partially owned by Nintendo, maybe trying to do some of that to create a quick extra 100 Pokemon for a new generation of Pokemon games, but even in that, I don't think they really need to. I bet there's plenty of fan art and artists out there who could think of 150 new Pokemon off the top of their head as far as characters. And they could just do a character submission poll contest or something if they had no ideas. And the actual technology to make a game in total using generative AI does not exist at the moment, so I think it will be a really, really long time, if ever, before you could replace AI video game development that way. Now, maybe we will see Nintendo having them do vibe coding and having large language modules help the programmers make games, but the actual art part, the audio and the visual art stuff, I think will be hand done for a long, long time. It's much more believable that Microsoft would try to use generative AI to make a game, but at the moment we already have a ton of slop mobile games made by not big companies but small ones. There's no reason to believe that an AI slop mobile game would be much better if Microsoft stepped in and tried to make an AI slop mobile game or console game. It would still probably be garbage. Let's see. Assassin's Creed Mirage's allegedly Saudi-funded DLC is set for official reveal. Update here. Valley of Memories is described as a free major update. Okay. Yep. Saudi Arabia is still putting tons of money into many social fields of entertainment around the Western world to gain favor and get people to talk positively about them, or at least just not talk negatively about them. There was a comedy show that happened recently that a bunch of comedians went to in Saudi Arabia, and they're getting a lot of pushback because of that. This is 21 minutes. So they're saying this is the 2nd anniversary of Assassin's Creed Mirage. I don't even remember a game called Assassin's Creed Mirage. Yeah. So I'm really out of the loop with the Assassin's Creed series at this point. Which I feel like most people probably are somewhat out of the loop on Assassin's Creed. Even if you've played all of them, I feel like people probably jump in, play them, forget about them, and then jump into the next game a few years later. Like, it really has stopped being a continuing narrative series that makes any sense. And I guess that's probably similar to several other series of video games, in that I doubt you really need to play all of the Call of Duty games to have a continuous story. I don't think any of the Far Cry games connect. Let's see. After just 1 week, at the top of the UK physical charts, EA Sports Football Club 26 drops the title to Ghost of Yoti, but physical sales of Sucker Punch's latest are reportedly 40% down on Ghost of Tsushima's. What is that? That's a lot of numbers here. Yeah. It's a headline that really reads like, we really wanted EA Sports Football Club to sell better because Video Games Chronicle is a UK-based news source and they're obsessed with soccer, but this Eastern themed game made it to the top slot. So let's then confuse the issue by saying that its sales are 40% down. Physical sales are 40% down compared to its predecessor, which is saying nothing because its predecessor came out in the middle of COVID-19 and physical sales are just slightly less common these days than they would have been when Ghost of Tsushima comes out. Next we have the quote, "They exist. Red Dead Redemption 2's PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2 versions are still happening," it's claimed. The PS4 and Xbox One versions were released in 2018. So, yeah. I'd assume Red Dead 2's upgraded versions are being held back for GTA to release first. Would be my guess. Nintendo has revealed more details about Samus's Metroid Prime 4 motorbike. Viola is a new form of transport in Metroid Prime 4, and here's how it works. Right. Seems like there's a whole article here without any video. And it says you can only summon it in specific areas. Yeah. In the first Darksiders game, you had a few places where you could summon a horse, as War, the Horseman of the Apocalypse. But then it very much is not used through the vast majority of the game, since it mostly is a Zelda-like platforming experience. Which, that's the biggest shame about Darksiders, is that they drastically changed the gameplay mechanic from the first one every time they made a sequel. I wouldn't be surprised if Viola plays a lot like that, in that you'll have these big desert areas, or at least flat areas, in which you're going to fight a few enemies and drive around. But I heavily question whether Samus makes sense on a motorbike. It really doesn't seem like it would, since her power suit and her super speed and super run basically had her have movement tech that was as good as a motorbike. So yeah, this really feels like this is gonna feel like a dumb edition. It feels like a dumb edition now. I suppose it isn't a dumb edition when people actually play Prime 4, if they ever actually can play Prime 4. Let's see. Moving on, details emerge on Xbox's cancelled Uncharted rival, Project Ranger. The cancelled Xbox exclusive was reportedly its answer to the PlayStation's action-adventure series, which, in fairness to Microsoft, canceling a project isn't a terrible thought when PlayStation hasn't made a new Uncharted game in a very long time. They haven't funded a second-party developer to make a new Uncharted game in a very long time. So, yeah. The Uncharted series in itself, though, I feel like has probably had similar games made by other people, but there is like not really a reason why Microsoft should do it. And see, this is another YouTuber's video showing off some of the videos. This is a 22-minute video. Let's see if we can just see this. See the trailer here. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the work done on this game was actually just put into Perfect Dark. So yeah, that's all they have really to show. PlayStation has quietly canceled the remaining PlayStation The Concert 2025 tour dates in the US. Virtually all of the 2025 PlayStation concerts have been canceled following similar European access. Which I feel like when this was announced, I also had some questions about whether you really would want to do something like this. And this almost certainly is a disconnect between doing a concert in Japan in a tiny concert hall where it makes some sense, and then having to have either a traveling orchestra go all around the world, which is going to be a lot of coordination, a lot of people having to travel around the world, or having different orchestras in different parts of the world. But in Japan, yes, a small orchestra could have done all of these PlayStation songs from multiple different games, but the fandom of PlayStation in general outside of Japan is going to be, I think, very low, and I just can't imagine you really would want to go sit through a concert through listening to songs through 4 different game series. Inherently, the biggest issue is that video game music is typically designed to be kind of background and kind of boring. And it's just not the kind of presentation that the West is expecting. Even when people go to like rock concerts and things like that, there is really a major social aspect of hanging out with people, maybe getting high with people during the concerts, while only spending half of your attention actually listening to the concerts. And even some of the biggest long-running traveling rock band type presentations these days tend to be not that great. So ticket sales seem to have been really low, and I'm not surprised by that. And that probably highlights a huge aspect of the new PlayStation, Sony Interactive, in that they are out of touch and overvaluing their fandom and how much they can gouge their fandom. Even in Japan, the gouging of fandom, which has been in the past almost unlimited, is starting to come to an end. Even Japanese fans are feeling tight economic struggles and are unwilling to waste money doing concerts and things like that. Moving on, the quote here is, "We are all hurting. Metal Hellslinger's studio has been closed as part of Funcom cuts. The Outsiders was acquired by Funcom just 3 years ago." Which, yeah, this is inherently, I think, this was the musical shooter game, one of them. Inherently, the problem, and why I don't think companies should probably be allowed to be acquired, is that it is almost always the case that the acquisitions are not about maintaining employees or maintaining the quality of a product. It's just maintaining the intellectual property. There's a real broken imbalance between how intellectual property is overvalued and everything else is undervalued. And so I imagine even I will probably at some point think about buying Metal Hellslinger and forget that the Outsiders and anybody who worked on that game have been shut down and laid off, and in no way would make any money from my purchase of Metal Hellslinger. And instead the purchase would go to Funcom, who has done nothing in this step to deserve that money. I'll leave it at that. That's going to bring us to the Gamatsu. But before I do the Gamatsu, I'm going to stand up and swap out my seat cushions for just a minute. So I'm not going to even pause the recording. I'm just going to mute myself and adjust my seat cushions. Be right back. Okay. Yeah. I think I mentioned in the last stream that I had stuffed a new seat cushion with foam, and there's too many foam bits in it, so I was getting uncomfortable. Anyways, Gematsu articles now. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope all of the Gematsu articles opened. I think there's a decent chance that's the case, but who knows? I may be just missing some articles here and there. Oh, yeah, and I might as well mention it. As I was sick, I turned on the 13 Nights with, what is her name? Elvira on Amazon Prime Video. And it's like a kind of ridiculous pop-up video thing where Elvira does an intro and she does an extro, an outro at the beginning and the end of the movie. And then she pops up with comments and text every now, but fairly rarely actually. Or she pops up on the screen and does a green screen overlay on the video. Very rarely though. It's weird. It feels like the pop-ups and the commentary and the green screens are all there just to maybe do some fair use thing, but I don't think it's really a fair use thing. But yeah, the first movie I believe it was something like Cannibalistic Women or something, and in the first 5 minutes you see a pretty modern movie with some topless ladies, and you don't get that too much even on Prime Video. And then the second movie is like Puppet Master 1, so that's a more known bad sci-fi movie. I would still say it's pretty bad. But yeah, I had those running in the background and I wasn't paying any real attention to them, though. But it's not quite like the Mystery Science Theater level. It's, though, I feel like Mystery Science Theater tends to have a lot more talking. And maybe the move is to push, see just what is the bare minimum amount of content that you can put into something and still claim fair use. But I bet that's not the case. And Elvira is been around for a long time. She's pretty old, so I would imagine she's spending just a day doing all this content for the movies, and that's it. So it was probably a good cheap buck for her. Anyways, we're supposed to be talking about the Gematsu video game news now. The narrative adventure game of Pizza Delivery launches November 7th for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Yeah. I haven't heard of this one. Yeah. So you have a 3D model of a character who's a pizza delivery person. And then you have what looks like just some random, maybe surreal visuals. See, inherently, something like this looks like something that could be a game, or it could just be almost nothing. Because I've seen plenty of like random games that try to have weird visuals to just convince people to play them or purchase them. But generally, if somebody makes a trailer and puts out a press release, there's one thing about Gematsu that I would say is kind of nice, is that they don't seem like they're going out of their way to make articles about games. I would have to assume that they are getting a press release type response and telling them that to promote certain games. So I would lean towards thinking that there probably is a game there. But surreal and weird, I think, hurts the promotion and the sales of games more than it helps in most cases. Moving on, Devil Jam for PC launches November 3rd. Metal-themed survivors-like game has been dated. Alright. So, not gonna bother to watch that trailer, I guess. This week's Japanese game releases: Battlefield 6, Little Nightmares 3, and more. And since this is Gamatsu talking about the releases, I'd have to assume all of the Steam links that we're about to look at are games that have released. So these either are just about out or out. Yeah. I guess that gives me an opportunity to look at these games. Frequent nudity, sexual content, game, Absalom, Veil the Witch. I'll put that on the follow list. We don't have that many Gamatsu articles today. Scourge Hive for PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, Switch and PC launches October 10th. Okay. See if we can get a visual on what it is. So, kind of pixely animation. So it's got platforming, shooting. Feels like a Game Boy Advance style game, if I was to guess. Well, this doesn't look bad. Is this an old game getting re-released? Would be my next question, because that would make some sense. Yeah. It is surprising how, since the Metroid series is not really cared about Nintendo, it is surprising how there aren't that many other video games with female leads, considering how Aliens and Sigourney Weaver established sci-fi female leads. Although in fairness, there's a lot of sci-fi sci-fi movies that don't have female leads. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a game called Scourge before. But yeah, there's nothing indicating there that it is an old game. Kingmaker's early access has been delayed to an unannounced date. Guess we have to just leave it at that. And then Space Chef launches October 28th. I'll leave it at that. Here's Space Chef. So before I go any further, let's look here. Hell Reaper, FIFA Heroes. According to the macro, we had already covered all of those. But yeah, this weirdly does seem like to me this could have been an article, and this could have been an article. And it feels like this entire first page. Marathon's closed technical test set for October 22nd through the 28th. I suppose at some point I could probably, if I really wanted to make these streams shorter, I could just go through the headlines like this and not click on the articles. That might make some sense. Just go through the headlines here. Minecraft's Crossworlds DLC Minecraft pack. Sonic Racing Crossworlds DLC Minecraft pack launches October 8th. This is big news. Yeah, you can see there is several articles here that seems like they have just been not opened. And then this one was opened, and this one was opened, but then this one wasn't opened. This one wasn't opened, and this one wasn't opened. And see, this concerns me a little bit because it makes me wonder. The opening movie for this game is here if you want to check it out on Gamatsu. It makes me wonder if there have been previous streams where I've missed story because Ninja Gaiden 4 DLC announced. Feels like there might have been cases where I might have missed some stories. But maybe not, because it was pretty easy to recognize that not all the articles were open, not enough articles were open. But there have been plenty of times when on a Monday it felt like no articles were opened. Limited Run Games Showcase is set for October 29th. This game, Blackwood, might be interesting. Third-person action thriller. Also might be nothing. No. Pre-apocalyptic side-scrolling action-adventure game announced for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. I would like to think I would be doing a better job covering the news today if I wasn't feeling so iffy, recovering from illness. But my concern, certainly my fear, is that I'm just going to be sicker and sicker more often and more often. Yeah. Well, this looks like a wide variety of stuff in this game, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of hard to get a good feel about how this game would really play. 2XKO Ties That Bind cinematic trailer. It's also available on Gamatsu. So, yeah. If we are going to see Broken Sword 2 reforged, then I assume this is the exact same thing as Broken Sword 1 reforged, in that they are going to be using AI to remaster the graphics, and to a certain extent it will be generative AI that will take the edges of screens that would have had nothing and add stuff to it. But maybe not. Maybe they learned their lesson, because they did get a decent amount of pushback from the first Reforged games, and maybe this is going to be now just 4K remastered using more traditional things that we would have called AI in the past, but now we would just call traditional upscaling. There is another issue with the Broken Sword series, in that the dialogue and the relationships between the George and Nicole seem to just like drastically always be changing, and so it feels like you should be having this growing romance between Nicole and George, and it just really doesn't ever happen. Or if it was supposed to be a growing friendship, even, it doesn't really feel like it makes sense, to the point where you get to the fourth game, I believe, and the whole game is in 3D. Nicole isn't really even playing a role at all. It probably would have been better after at that point to just kill off Nicole as a character, and since you play as George. But yeah, the smoking mirror is perhaps still alright, but then by the time you even are at the third Broken Sword game, it goes in wild directions. Yeah. And I'd have to assume a big reason for that is simply because different people were built making the game. So yeah, the Serpent's Curse, the fifth game, also the most recent game to be actually have new content, was also a disappointment to me. But here's Broken Sword 3, where they go 3D. Here's Broken Sword 2, but notice they've taken off any ability to purchase Broken Sword 1 that isn't the reforged version. They had already done remastered versions. Yeah. And Broken Sword 4 seems to be missing completely, which I would guess, yeah, here's Angel of Death, the mixed reviewed one, and yeah, Nicole's not even in this one much at all. So the second time around, they once again are going to have to consider what are they going to do with the Sleeping Dragon and Angel of Death. And they probably aren't going to do anything with these two mixed games. but then they can't really jump from 2 to 5. So they need to make something new that they could call 3. I don't see how they could do that. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to say anything specific about using AI this time. But I bet they are going to use AI just like they did before. Yeah, it's a shame. There's a lot of point-and-click adventures that are worth playing just once, but if you try to go back and play them nowadays a second time, a third time, it's hard to find the fun in them. That they've failed to really hold up and compete compared to other genres. And frankly, that's almost universal in the genre too. It's like even the most recent Monkey Island game just fails to recapture the fun that point and click adventures used to have. And some of the best point and clicks I have seen have been from smaller, more random developers doing weirder stories where it wouldn't make sense to do many other types of developments. Alright, that's going to bring us to gaming on Linux, and I'm just going to kind of try and rush through this. Honestly, if gaming on Linux didn't open any articles, I'm not even going to bother with it. They're talking about Broken Sword. Speed is the name of the game in the Source Engine powered Momentum mod. Okay. Crysis Remastered Trilogy gets a Good Old Games release, with the original Crysis now in the Good Old Games Preservation program. Merge dogs to make bigger dogs in a delightfully silly roguelike deck builder called Dogpile. Right, that sounds silly. Lego The Incredibles gets a small update to improve Steam Deck support. It is surprising how they are going through some of these older Lego games and adding Steam Deck support, but maybe it's not as difficult as it might seem to make those tweaks. Fan-made Unreal Remake Unreal Redux shows off fancy new trailer. Let's watch that. Now, is Unreal different than Unreal Tournament? Maybe. Because, yeah, this is not what I would be expecting from something called for Unreal Tournament. This looks like a fantasy game. It's still fairly low polygonal, and I think at some point we are going to just have games that can be automatically upscaled from being low polygonal to high polygonal, at which point old games are going to feel so old nobody's going to want to play them. It's not really a case where people are going to make the argument that it's an artistic style. Yeah. The shot-for-shot comparisons where you're seeing very different pictures is interesting. Yeah, it really does come under the category of a remake and not a remaster at this point when you're putting completely different textures on things and different 3D models on things. So that trailer went for a very long time without showing any of the shooting. So this is a run and gun shooter game, but I'm still not sure if Unreal Tournament isn't a spin-off of Unreal. I have to admit, I don't know how I would really review a lot of these games. Like, if you're running and gunning and that's all you're doing for the entire level, and there's no puzzles and there's no narrative, it makes it very hard to make commentary, for me to make commentary on it. So it would be much more of a laid back and silent playthrough. Oh, speaking of silent playthrough, I saw another video that was recommended to me that said no commentary, and anytime I see no commentary, I really have an allergic reaction to it, to a video like that, because no commentary means, yeah, we're not actually putting any artistic contribution to it, and we're just stealing somebody else's content in a non-fair use way. And I was thinking maybe I should put in the description of all my videos that if you want no commentary, if you want hashtag no commentary, mute the video, and then try and steal some views from people who are searching no commentary. Because frankly, yeah, I don't feel like no commentary videos should be allowed on Steam. I mean, not Steam, YouTube. I feel like YouTube should be, with a heavy hand, searching the phrase no commentary and saying, hey, we are not allowing no commentary gameplay footage on our service because it's wasting our storage and because you're not contributing anything to society there. Wine 10.16 has been released with fast synchronization support using NT-Sync. That sounds like that is something useful. I don't know if it really is or not, though. And I said we were going to just go through whatever we went through, but we'll scroll down here on the Gaming on Linux and see if we missed some other stories. Dwarf Fortress got some more fixes and a preview of Siege update due soon, and a modding jam. Lots of Warhammer games and the latest Humble Bundle is what the NVIDIA GeForce Now during October. Marvel Cosmic Invaders gets a demo with native Linux support. Let's see. Think we may have talked about the rest of these. Yeah. So I don't think we need to cover any of the rest of this, but that is also page 2, so let's go back to page 1. Let's see if we missed anything. Child of Ages. My Child of Ages. We didn't see. Let's see. Anything else worth mentioning? So scrolling down here. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had my macros screw up this much. So is this character swap between two ages, or is it two different characters? Seems like it's two different ages of the same character. Yeah. Yeah. What I suspect is going to happen is I'm going to find that a whole bunch of these news articles opened up in a different window. Just blob-like creatures being fought. That's an interesting art style. And then this character has a dress that seems to go up so often that they've intentionally put in a pair of shorts under the dress. There's going to be a whole swimming section. So it might be easy to overlook this, but this very possibly could be something like a Ocarina of Time type competitor, similar experience. Which, yeah, you could always do with another Zelda-like game on PC and anything other than a Nintendo console. That's going to bring us to GameDeveloper.com. Dear game developers, please remember what on the record means. Let's discuss the role of journalists and journalism in the game industry. Which, yeah, I would assume game developers should know what on the record means. Like, the on background is the more confusing phrase, where they don't want to be the first source of information, but they will confirm information to a news reporter that the news reporter is getting from a first source. For example, if GameDeveloper.com heard a rumor that Microsoft was raising the price of Game Pass yet again, they might have one source that they're going to quote, and then they would go ask other people who might have been in the room to confirm that on background. But yeah, if you're a developer and somebody said, and a journalist says, this is on the record, right? And they go, yeah, sure, whatever. And then they start shooting their mouth off, and then they're upset that you printed what they said. Then that's really not the journalist's fault. Although, let's be honest, journalists often do terrible reporting in the video game sphere, and in the past have done some shady, unethical things. The only other game developer article we have is Clover Pit has sold 500,000 units in 8 days. It's not super surprising. Let's scroll up here on GameDeveloper.com and see if we have any other articles. Yeah, probably not. But also kind of hard to read this. Lucid Game opens Liverpool office to support expansion. Yeah, we had already talked about that. So that's enough of that. So in this case, if there were games that came out on Steam that didn't open up, they are just going to be a loss. And it frankly won't be that big of a loss, because if it's a big game, it'll put out some other bit of information, a new trailer, an announcement, and I'll see it again later. If it's a huge game, it'll make it to the Steam front page. If it's a small game, it might be overlooked, but some small niche game that is actually good is fairly unlikely to happen. So we are just going to go through all of the games on Steam and try and end this stream pretty fast. And I don't think I'm going to push myself particularly too hard for the rest of the day, so I'll probably just end up watching more of those Elvira terrible movies. Yeah. Part of the reason why I may have gotten sick is also not a good reason to believe this, but I did stay up that one night, and shift my sleep schedule all over again. Alright. We've got a problem here. The problem here is I only have 5 games open at the moment. And then there's Flawless Cleanup, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that are out of order. So it may have been everything was open and it was just out of order. Alright, well, let's just go through everything then. As far as Flawless Cleanup stuff, I don't think we need to look at anything there. And so yeah, we'll keep on going. So as I go through games on Steam, if you see me moving up and down like this, I'm closing the tab. Here we have a Gaming on Linux. Unity devs scramble to update their games due to recent security issues. I already talked about that. And if I go like this, it means I'm keeping the tab open to make a YouTube short on it. But I do think today I might be particularly picky, so I may not make too many YouTube shorts. Free Lives Terra Neil Broforce releases a demo for side effects. That's Buckshot Roulette meets Big Pharma. Let's see what this looks like. It seems like this is really gross. Yeah. Yeah, this seems sinister and gross. Yep. Alright. I'll make a YouTube short on it. I actually haven't made any YouTube shorts in a long time. I'm just getting further and further behind as I am not making any progress in building my computer. Instead, spending time doing other things, cleaning, decluttering, and not gonna make the October 14th deadline for Windows 10's end of support. I don't want to make any new YouTube shorts using my old computer. I could do it. I also haven't scheduled to put on any YouTube shorts because of that in a while. In a long while, and that has probably hurt me as far as view time and watch time. I heard someone, a YouTuber, say they get about $40 for every 10,000 views, which, okay, it's not particularly big numbers, but it's probably pretty accurate. I think you would be pretty crazy to think that you could actually make a living wage being a YouTuber. Even the biggest, most successful content creators are forced to do sponsorships and other things to maintain a livable wage or a good wage. Is that game Scourge Hive? A lot of these have check marks next to them, which makes me assume I have made a YouTube short on them already. Yeah, I've said in the past, I think I'm gonna have to reload this. I've said in the past it would be nice if I could get $2,000 a month from Steam, from YouTube. It'd be nice just to be in the YouTube Partner Program in general, but yeah, 2,000 would do me very nicely. If you need $10,000 to get $40, then 10,000 views to get $40, then one would assume you would have to be getting, what would that be? Roughly 600,000 views a month. So yeah, 500,000 to 1 million views a month. Wow, this page just does not want to load. Alright, well, I'm gonna have to just hold on to that page. Well, this was an adult game called Mary Bunny Garden, and it is the one where it's anime bunny girls that are drunk and you're controlling them in this co-op. So they've changed how Steam works, and so now my code is not working, I don't think. This one is just Little Nightmares 3. Okay. So when I drag this window to another window, this is Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition. Which you can seemingly only get if you pre-order the Little Nightmares 3 or get Little Nightmares 3 Deluxe Edition pre-order bundle. So yeah, I don't know what went on there. Two games just did not want to load, one of which felt like it was because of the adult filter, but I'm not sure that really is the case. A lot of these already have check marks, so I'm closing the tabs just because I don't want to make another YouTube short on them. Yeah, Crisis Remastered Trilogy gets a good old games release. We talked about that. It's John's house, I'll give that a chance. So we're gonna end up going through some stories, I think we've already talked about. I need to hurry up. Also, yeah, I need to hurry up because my chairs, seat cushions are running flat on me again. Yeah. Really just need something that inflates and deflates. Which they make those for like people with bed sores and people in hospital beds 24/7. Yeah. Yeah, I can feel that. I still just feel very wobbly. Mentally and physically. I'll tell you, even when I'm at my best, this is an adult game called Everybody Wants My Girl. Lady with giant boobs. Yeah. Anyways, even when I'm at my best, I definitely feel like my legs are sometimes wobbly, and one of these days I do feel like I'm going to trip and just snap my leg in half. And it is, at the moment, more of an intrusive thought than a reality. But my concern is that at some point it is just going to be a reality. Yeah. Which I wouldn't be the first person in the world to break a leg, certainly, but it's definitely not something I would want to have happen. And who knows, maybe I'll get lucky and the first time I fall will be the time I hit my head and kick it to the next world. Of course, most people who are much older than I am have that fear, and the risk of falls, particularly inside your house, are pretty high. It's not really a great thing to do to prevent falls. You can have non-slippery surfaces, you can have more of a carpeted area that maybe cushion your fall a little bit. Yeah. But very little is going to stop a fall from being bad, because a fall can be bad even if you're only falling a few inches if you twist and contort the right way. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just not really feeling up to it today. I wish when I did get sick, which in the past have been very rarely, I may have bragged about in the past of only getting sick once every 4 or 5 years. I don't think it's going to be that way going forward. but I wish it was a shorter experience where you're sick for an hour or two, not 12 to 48 hours. Although maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe I'll be too miserable and too sick to do any of the Prime Day sales. The anticipation there is that the Prime Day sales are gonna probably not actually be anything worth buying, or it'll be stuff worth buying if you already were gonna buy it, which is always the case, but not stuff that is discounted to a point where you would be actually getting any savings by buying it if you hadn't planned on buying it. And many people would argue that if you are buying stuff you didn't plan on buying in the first place, you're never going to be able to claim an actual savings there. And to a certain point that's true. To a certain point it's not true. Like if you're buying shoes, for instance, more than likely you're going to need a pair of shoes in the future at some point, and they don't go bad sitting in a shelf waiting to be your next pair of shoes to wear. But if you're buying, say, a air compressor and you're never going to use it, or a power washer and you're never going to use it, then that's not really any savings. I think we probably may have even seen some of these games before, but that doesn't really mean too much. Right, well, just like that, despite all these problems, that is the end of the show. So I'm gonna end it here. We managed to rush through the news on a slow Monday otherwise and do this under 2 hours.